What if there were particles capable of passing through your body, the entire Earth, and continuing their journey through the universe almost without ever being seen? Now, imagine trying to capture them not in a regular laboratory, nor in a secret military base, but 1,500 meters underground, beneath an old gold mine in the interior of the United States. Why would anyone dig caves the size of 7-story buildings just to observe something that almost never interacts with anything? The project is named the DEMI Underground Neutrino Experiment, or DEMI Underground Neutrino Experiment. With an investment of over $3 billion, the project will turn deep mining into heavy engineering and frontier physics into a single monumental undertaking. Here, engineering is not just used to transport people or goods. It is used to answer one of the biggest questions in modern science: why does the universe exist the way it does? Stay with us for the next few minutes to understand why the United States is searching for the answer to this question more than a kilometer below the surface. The heart of DUNE lies beneath Leeds. In South Dakota, inside the Sanford Underground Research Facility, an old mine that goes down almost 2,500 meters deep. The experiment occupies the level known as 4,850 and exactly 1,440 meters below the surface, protected by more than 4,300 meters equivalent of rock against cosmic radiation. Down there, engineers are digging 2 giant caverns, each one 445 meters long, 20 meters wide, and 28 meters high. In addition to a large utility space which supports ventilation, power, and operational support, all this space is enough to accommodate structures containing tens of thousands of tons of liquid argon, cooled to minus 186 degrees Celsius. What makes this project more unique is that these caverns don't operate alone. They are part of an experiment connected by a particle beam that travels 1,300 kilometers from Fermilab in Illinois to the underground site in South Dakota. Now, the question that inevitably arises is why build all of this so deep, so far away, and with such precision? For decades, neutrinos have been called ghost particles. After all, they have almost no mass, no electric charge, and pass through solid materials as if they didn't exist. Trillions of them pass through you every second coming from the sun, even from supernovas, without leaving a trace. But small differences in the behavior of neutrinos might explain something colossal: why the universe is made of matter and not antimatter. It was to answer this that the United States Department of Engineering decided to lead the largest neutrino experiment ever conceived. DEMI Underground Neutrino Experiment doesn't just aim to detect neutrinos, but to observe how they change identity over great distances, a phenomenon called oscillation. But measuring this effect requires absolute silence. Cosmic radiation, solar particles, and environmental noise can ruin the data. Use the Earth itself as a shield. The old Homestead gold mine, where decades ago solar neutrinos had already been detected, offered something rare: depth, geological stability, and existing vertical infrastructure. But turning a historic mine into a cutting-edge physics laboratory would require something even bigger. So the question arises that leads us to the next segment. How do you safely build a scientific laboratory the size of a skyscraper 1.5 miles underground? Today, the Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment has already passed the most critical stage of any underground construction: the deep excavation and the final environment. In February 2024, the engineers announced the completion of 100% of the excavations for the Long Baseline Neutrino Facility, the underground complex that will house the Deep Underground Neutrino Experiment detectors. About 800,000 tons of rock were removed, at a depth where geological pressure, the Earth's natural heat, and vertical logistics turn any mistake into an immediate risk. This milestone doesn't just mark the end of the noisiest phase of the construction, but the moment when the project crosses the boundary between heavy mining and permanent scientific infrastructure. With the excavation completed, the project has officially entered the outfitting phase. When the cavern stops being a mine and starts becoming a laboratory, that's when the permanent electronic systems come in. Redundant data networks, permanent drainage, long-term ventilation, and final structural reinforcements that will support decades of continuous operation. Getting to this stage took nearly a decade of intensive engineering, careful planning, and perfect execution without room for surprises. The excavation was carried out mainly using the drill and blast method, similar to deep mining, but with much stricter restrictions. Every hole, every explosive charge, and every detonation sequence had to comply with strict vibration limits, monitored in real time. In order not to compromise existing galleries or alter the structural integrity of the rock around the caverns, after each detonation, a precise industrial choreography would take place. Excavators and loaders collected the fragmented material, transporting it through tunnels to key loading points. From there, the material was hoisted through almost 1.5 kilometers of vertical shafts in continuous cycles, day and night, without interrupting other operations in the complex. Right after excavation, the walls were coated with thick layers of shotcrete, applied with strict control over composition and finish. This coating was not only for geological stabilization, but also to reduce particle detachment, control seepage, and ensure the firmness of the rock. Next, thousands of steel anchors were installed, some over 100 meters long, anchoring potentially unstable rock blocks to the deeper and more resistant layers of the geological formation. But supporting the mountain above was only part of the problem. At a depth of 1,500 meters, ventilation becomes a vital system. The hot air filled with dust, post-blast gases, and humidity needs to be removed quickly to allow the teams to return safely. That's why the complex has dedicated ventilation shafts, large industrial fans, and kilometers of metal ducts, creating a constant flow of fresh air. Even for the most remote work fronts, team access required unique engineering solutions. Everything depends on the shafts, Ross and Yates industrial elevators that function as the true vertical arteries of the project. Each descent is choreographed with precision. Technical teams, giant metal structures, cables, electrical panels, and even delicate scientific components share the same infrastructure, following strict time windows. When the two main caverns were finally fully open, the true scale of the project was impressively revealed. Each of them is 145 meters long, as tall as a 7-story building, and wide enough to accommodate giant cryogenic tanks, technical walkways, and auxiliary systems. Now the challenge changes. In the coming years, these caverns will receive liquid argon cryostats, drilling systems, thermal insulation, multi-layers, electronic sensors, and internal support structures. The temperature must first rise, then slowly drop to minus 186 degrees Celsius in a controlled process to avoid structural stress, cracks, or deformations in the tanks and the surrounding rock. From this point on, the project stops being just civil engineering and mining. It becomes scientific precision engineering, where every decision made today can influence data collected over decades of observing the universe. To grasp what makes DUNE unique, compare it directly with other major underground projects worldwide. Most importantly, make these numbers meaningful beyond just on paper. In Europe, the Gran Tassel National Laboratory in Italy is one of the most well-known. It is protected by about 1,400 meters of rock and has housed dozens of scientific experiments over the decades. The accumulated project cost reached about $160 million, equivalent to 832 million Rs at the exchange rate when this video was completed. For comparison, that's equivalent today to buying more than 11,000 economy cars in Canada. SnowLab, installed at about 2,000 meters deep, is even deeper than DUNE. The focus, however, is not on volume, but on absolute silence. The cost of adapting the old nickel mine was in the tens of millions of dollars, something equivalent today to a single kilometer of underground subway in a major city in Asia. The China Shipping Underground Laboratory holds the world record for depth. It's more than 2,400 meters below the surface. In terms of natural shielding, it's unbeatable, but again, the project prioritizes extreme depth over large excavated volumes. The demi-underground neutrino experiment, on the other hand, does exactly the opposite. Just during the excavation phase, about 800,000 tons of rock were removed, which is equivalent to the weight of 8 modern aircraft carriers or more than 130,000 fully loaded trucks. The total investment in the long baseline neutrino facility and demi-underground neutrino experiment complex, estimated at between $3.2 billion and $3.7 billion, puts the project in a different category. That amount would allow you to buy about 250,000 economy cars in Brazil today, build a giant hydroelectric plant, or implement a complete subway system in a Brazilian capital. Unlike dams, railway tunnels, or power plants, here, vibration and contamination control needs to be much stricter than in regular civil construction projects. DUNE is not just big, it's one of the rare projects where physical scale, extreme depth, multi-billion-dollar costs, and absolute scientific precision all come together in the same project. Maybe that's why it's so hard to find anything comparable in the world. In the coming years, DUNE is entering its most anticipated phase. The detectors will be installed, the tanks will be filled with liquid argon, and the neutrino beam will begin to operate. In scientific operation, the impact actually goes beyond science. The project drives the local economy and the high-tech industrial chain, generating jobs and heavy engineering contracts. And economic impact studies have already estimated significant effects in the region. The Stanford Underground Research Facility is also preparing to expand, making room for new experiments in physics, geoscience, extreme biology, and emerging technologies. What started as a gold mine is becoming one of the most important places on the planet to understand the universe. DUNE is not just a scientific experiment, it's proof that engineering can be used to investigate fundamental questions about existence. Digging 1,500 meters below the ground wasn't an exaggeration, it was a method. When science demands absolute silence, extreme stability, and total precision, the only possible direction is down to where engineering can isolate the universe from the noise of the Earth itself. Thank you for watching until the end. What are your thoughts on this major United States scientific project? Were you aware of it? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you like this video, give it a like. That's it for now. Big hug. See you next time.